Hello, thanks for joining my talk today. I'm Dr. Christopher Payne, and I'd like to talk to you today about addressing efficiency and sustainability together, specifically with regard to data center operations. I work at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, where we conduct research on energy efficiency in data centers. Today, I'd like to talk to you about three things. The first is a little bit about what we do at LBL with regard to data center energy performance. The second is some recent legislation that has been passed that affects data center operations. And the third is Biden administration priorities regarding energy efficiency and sustainability in data centers. Before we get started, I should do the usual legal disclaimers. The things I'll be talking about today express my own opinions and not those of my employer, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, or the University of California, nor the Department of Energy or the US government. So with that out of the way, let's turn to research that we do at LBL. The Center of Expertise for Energy Efficiency in Data Centers is really made up of two things. The first is a web portal that provides access to a number of resources. And the second is a set of expert staff at LBL who study data center energy performance. The Center of Expertise is sponsored by the US Department of Energy's Federal Energy Management Program. And as we'll see, we have a fairly strong federal focus in data center optimization. We host the work and the web portal at LBL to make the information that we gather publicly available. And as I said, the web portal includes a number of decision tools regarding energy performance in data centers, a number of case studies about specific technologies and their energy performance in data centers. And then we would also offer direct technical assistance from our staff in helping both federal sector and private sector clients improve data center performance. And we conduct primary research to try to identify new technology and operational practices that can improve the energy and sustainability of data centers. The Center of Expertise can be found at datacenters.lbl.gov, and I encourage you to go there and take a look. One of the things you'll find on that site is the opportunity to sign up for a newsletter, which I encourage you to do. So, turning now to legislative issues. In 2020, Congress passed the Energy Act of 2020. This is actually a little bit subtle. It was buried within the omnibus appropriations bill that accompanied the funding for the federal government that year. But Section 1003 of the Energy Act of 2020 identified a number of goals related to data center sustainability and energy efficiency. And I'd like to highlight a couple of them today. The first is a requirement for LBL to update the data center energy usage report. You may be familiar with some of our earlier work on data center usage, first published in around 2005, and then updated about 10 years later in 2015, 2016 timeframe. And that work really tried to lay a foundation for estimating the total energy use of data centers in the United States, as well as some of the drivers of that energy use, some projections for what we could expect to see in energy use growth over time, and some opportunities to optimize data center performance to change some of those growth curves. So in the Energy Act of 2020, we are directed to update this report with some key components. That includes a comparison and analysis of the estimates that we conducted before related to new data in the 2015 to 2019 timeframe. Essentially, how good were our projections compared to realized performance over the past 4 or 5 years. Second, to think about the impact of information technologies, including virtualization and cloud computing, in both the public and private sector. So we're directed explicitly there to think about energy use in the public sector separately from the private sector. So we're going to try to characterize both of those, not just a unified analysis of data center energy use in the United States. Third, we're directed to evaluate the impact of cloud platforms, mobile devices, social media, big data, essentially where are current industry trends taking us in terms of the energy use of data centers, and what can we expect for the future in that regard. Fourth, a new area, thinking about water usage in data centers. So, our earlier work focused specifically on electricity usage. Now we're thinking more about the water use that goes with the cooling of data centers primarily, and thinking about recommendations that can reduce that water impact of data center operation. And finally, updating our projections related to anticipated growth in data center energy use over the next 5 years, as well as updating our recommendations for best practices about how we can optimize data center performance and manage that growth over that time frame. As we prepare this data center energy usage report, we will be reaching out to the private sector to collect data and inform our projections. And so this is one way that we can think about sustainability and efficiency together. We'll be looking forward to working closely with you to collect information that can inform our report. A second area that I want to highlight of the Energy Act has to do with the Data Center Energy Practitioner, or DCEP program. LBL maintains the curriculum for the DCEP program for the Department of Energy, but the delivery of the DCEP training is privatized. So you can choose from a variety of private sector actors who provide that training, and the test that allows you to demonstrate your proficiency as a data center energy practitioner. And we maintain that list of people who have passed those exams at LBL. So the legislation here does a couple of things. One, it specifically directs OMB and other agencies in the federal government to maintain the DCEP program. So this sort of reaffirms that the federal government is committed to the idea of offering this practitioner program. And it provides for the certification of practitioners in federally owned and operated data centers. So the idea there is that we are trying to make sure that the people who operate data centers for federal operations are highly skilled in optimizing the performance of those data centers. And second, this evaluation piece directs a quadrennial review of each data center in the federal sector to make sure that any opportunities for energy performance enhancement in those data centers are identified and ideally captured. So again, the idea here is that audits would be conducted by DCEP certified practitioners that would allow them to identify opportunities for enhancement in federal data centers. And of course, I've been emphasizing federal data centers in my discussion here, but there's nothing about the DCEP program that has to be limited to the federal sector. And of course, we have a number of privately certified DCEP practitioners who operate in private sector data centers, and we certainly encourage that. Look forward to working with you to increase the number of people who are trained in these important topics. Third, Section 103 of the Energy Act, 1003, speaks to this idea of an open data initiative. And essentially what we're trying to do here is make sure that the best practices of data centers are made, first, are identified, and second, are made widely available so we can learn from each other and make sure we're optimizing operation. So again, the Open Data Initiative is explicitly for federally owned and operated data centers, but the idea here is really that the information that we collect and the ways that we provide data in the federal community would spill over into the broader private sector data center operations. And so we hope to make sure that we can all together identify and implement best practices in data center operation. So those are some highlights of the Energy Act of 2020, Section 1003, the section on data center energy performance. There are other sections that might be of interest to you. The full law is only about a page and a half. It's actually fairly straightforward reading. So I encourage you to look it up online if you're so inclined. Point being, at LBL, we're very interested in making sure that the goals of these Act provisions are realized, and we look forward to working with you to try to make sure that occurs. So, in conclusion, thinking about working with you, I want to identify some key Biden administration priorities for the coming year. Those include technology pathways to decarbonization. A key priority of the Biden administration is thinking about how we can identify technologies and practices that allow us to reduce carbon intensity in data centers. And so at the Center of Expertise at LBL, we're thinking carefully about how we can make that information available about technologies that can enhance decarbonization, as well as operational practices that can make sure that those technologies are brought into operation and used effectively. And that speaks to the second point, workforce capacity. All the technologies in the world don't do any good if we don't have people that can help identify them, install them, implement them, operate them properly. And so we are committed to thinking about optimizing performance through training and workforce development to make sure that qualified practitioners are operating our data centers. And third, a key administration priority is this idea of environmental justice. In some cases, we've seen situations where the environmental benefits accrue to many, but the environmental hardships only accrue to a few. We want to make sure that the application of improvements to data center energy use, the siting of data centers, the reduction in carbon intensity of our data center operations, both in the public and private sector, are made available equally across the US. And so these concepts of decarbonization, workforce capacity to optimize performance, and environmental justice are key things that we'll be thinking about at the Center of Expertise as we go forward. So, having gone through those three aspects of my talk, I encourage you to reach out and contact us at the Center of Expertise. We're interested in collaborating. As I mentioned earlier, some of this research related to the data center usage report and some of the curriculum development related to the data center energy practitioner program are really key to making sure that we can improve data center sustainability and energy efficiency. So we look forward to hearing from you. Contact information is available on the slide, and we'll hope to speak with you soon. Thanks for attending my talk. I hope you enjoy the symposium.